So if you had to sum up this portion in one word, could you?
Don't.
Don't. That's pretty good. Don't. Don't. Because it starts out with a don't, doesn't it? Holy. Holy. There you go. Set apart. Kadosh. Yeah. I like don't. That's good. And holy is the thing, I think, here. And one thing that I want to cover today.
Don't do it because you are.
Yes. Because if you do it, you won't be anymore. You'll be set apart, you'll be cut off. And we don't want that. What was it Dallas said that one time up here? Either live set apart or be set apart, right? So this is how a lot of ways to live set apart. Where I think our focus is going to take us today, and this is just the way the Father's been working in me this week. Last week I sort of had a plan, and then he changed it Thursday night. This week he waited till he gave me Wednesday night, so it was a little bit more time to work on it. So just love how that works. So what we're going to do, I think, spend probably a lot of our time, and just kind of depends on where discussion goes, because you guys know how this works in this room. A lot of in Leviticus 16 and looking at the Day of Atonement, because as I'm sitting here listening to this, talking about set apart, holy, kadosh, sanctified, all these different thoughts are going through my head. And the Sabbath is a day set apart out of the week, right? One day out of the week that is God's. That's our day. That's our time to be with Him. Well, how much more set apart is Day of Atonement than even that? Out of all the days of the year, there's one day when the high priest was able to go in to the Holy of Holies, as the wonderful songs you guys led today, thank you. One day he could go in there to that spot. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw our typical diagram, because our focus today, at least for now, is in here. We'll put everything else on the scene. Okay, our focus is right there where we start today anyway, in Leviticus 16. Day of Atonement has a series of commands, statutes, ordinances, guidance, whatever you want to call them. But there are some for Aaron and some for us. And what I'd like to look at first with you guys is the ones for Aaron. He is the high priest. How is he supposed to approach the most holy place? What does he do for Day of Atonement?
First he has to give a sacrifice, the blood of himself and his family.
Yeah. For himself and his family. Kind of like we looked at before with sin offering, guilt offering, all that. The priest takes care of that first. Well, same pattern here on Day of Atonement. What else? He brings the bull and the ram for himself, sin offering, and then what does he do?
Puts on the holy linen tunic, linen undergarment shall be next to his body.
Yeah.
He shall be girded with linen sash and attired with a linen turban. These are the holy garments.
So it's not just kind of, hey, show up and take care of this stuff when, the time is right.
Well, he says, he said, he shall put on the holy linen tunic, he goes through everything, and then he says, then he shall bathe his body in water. And put them on. A bit backwards.
Depends on your translation how it reads that, I think, because some say these are the sacred garments, so he must bathe himself with water before he puts them on.
He shall immerse himself in water instead.
Yeah, because it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to
Put them on,
take them out, yeah, but it makes sense. So, God's a God of order and logic, not a God of chaos and craziness. All right, so he offers for himself, for his family, and then we get to the goats, is that right? Or are we missing something yet?
No.
Okay. Y'all are really, really quiet so far. All right, so we have the goats.
Cast lots.
Cast lots for the goats. All right, what else?
So basically, the Lord determines which is the scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
Needs a ram for the burnt.
But he has that with him right now, right?
It seems like it just says he'll take, in verse 5, and she'll take from the congregation of children of Israel
Yep.
2 kids of the goats, a sin offering, and 1 of a burnt offering.
So we're going to put ram up here beside the goats because the indication is he kind of gathers all this stuff up is kind of the picture that I get anyway. Kind of he's prepared. Yeah, he's prepared. Good word. Thank you. So then we cast lots over the goats.
That's interesting. It says one lot for the Lord and 1 lot for the scapegoat. To me, I'm thinking casting lots is like, okay, which one do you use as a scapegoat? It's eeny, meeny, miny, you're the scapegoat. But it seems to be implying something different there?
Seems to be maybe there's 2 rocks in a hat, and 1 rock is for God, and that's the first goat, and one's just, I don't know.
Now, does he,
That was God's first, surely.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe
Definitely
they're,
God's first.
maybe they're different colors or something like that?
Would they not be the
That's what
Urim
I was
and
thinking.
Thummim?
One more time, louder.
Would they not be the Urim or Urim and Thummim? I forget which one has an R.
Mm.
And Thummim?
To him, yeah. Because he does have sacred garments on, right? What was a comment over here?
and now does he, gathers the bull as an offering for himself before he casts the lots, does he?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Yep, in 6.
Although in Aaron, or in 11, talks about bringing the bull for the sinner offering to make atonement, and slaughters the bull. So, but I think that's because it's tying it into the incense that's going to be taken in behind the curtain.
Well, it seems to me that it's like, okay, God told you, he was prepared.
Mhm.
Then he brings the bull, like in 6, he brings the bull and presents it. He brings the goats, presents them,
yes.
does the lots. Then
Thank
he
you.
does all the sacrifice. You know what I mean? Like it's a progression of presenting and then,
Yeah. And all this stuff is taking place kind of out here, and that's outside area. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That's what I had written down over here, but didn't look at my notes. So, yeah, so he's presenting everything, getting everything ready, and then we can start sacrificing. We can start the bloodshed, right? All right, and one thing that I think we'll probably come back to. Let's keep on going through here. We've got verse 11 and 12, and what I wanted you to look at, and you probably already know it, I'm preaching to the choir pretty much on this stuff. In verse 12, Aaron takes a censer full of burning coals from the altar before the Lord and 2 handfuls of finely ground fragrant incense, and takes them behind the curtain, and puts the incense on the fire before the Lord, and the smoke of the incense will conceal the atonement cover above the testimony so that he will not die. Or we talked about just a couple of weeks ago, Nadab and Abihu, the 2 Yehus, who took an incense, put coals in, or took a censer, put coals in, then grabbed incense, put that on the coals, but where were they?
In the wrong place.
They weren't back here, that's for sure. And they weren't the right people, and it weren't the right time, wasn't at the right place. They were in the flesh, trying to do things on their own. Yes, Jim?
And what we know of this incense, that it's made in a special way, and you're not supposed to make it outside of this use. It's not supposed to be used. It says, even when they talk about the guys who made it, that it was not supposed to be duplicated and used anywhere else. So they make that implication right from the beginning, that really that's the only place where it's supposed to be used and burned.
Unless it's the same incense for here, right? Or is it,
I don't think so.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure, because I think there's the one incense that they talk about that
It's
is
sacred.
only,
It's sacred and it goes into the Holy of Holies.
yeah.
where do we get that? Because where are the recipes for two different incense? Or are there?
There's a recipe for that one incense, but then obviously we see them sprinkling incense or, what they put incense on the showbread or something, or what, is that frankincense or? I'm trying to think, I mean, I don't know that there is a place, like you're saying, I mean, I think that's a good question. There's not really a place where they delineate, okay, here's the incense for within the Holy of Holies, and here's the incense for everything else,
Right.
you know?
Because I don't know that there are two separate things. I don't think there are. I remember one recipe for incense.
Right, that was not to be duplicated.
Because what's the difference from the incense here and the incense here is location,
The high priest.
the high priest. You know, he goes to the little incense box or whatever they've got, you know, probably not. But, because this is burning all the time, constantly. And then one time, take some in there. One day, at the right time, in the right way, with the right garments, with the right coverings, with the right person.
So I think I've misunderstood this until now. So he actually takes a censer into the Holy of Holies with him.
He takes a censer into the Holy of Holies with him, and the way it reads, at least the way the NIV reads it, he doesn't put incense and fire together till he's here. That's the way it reads.
Right, he mixes it inside
Yeah.
the Holy Holy.
I'll read it, this again in verse 12, and this is the NIV, so look at your version and see if there's anything that gives a different indication. But he is to take a censer full of burning coals from the altar before Yahweh, and 2 handfuls of finely ground fragrant incense, and take them behind the curtain. So he's got the censer, got the incense behind the curtain. Verse 13, he's to put the incense on the fire before Yahweh, and the smoke of the incense will conceal the atonement cover above the testimony so that he will not die. Just the way that it sounds, take them both in, put them together inside, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. The way I understood that was the veil being the veil between the court and the holy place. So he takes a coal from the brazen altar, brings it in here, puts it on. But that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, because there are coals
That was
here,
before the testimony, right?
because there are coals in the incense, on the incense altar.
Right.
That's got to be burning too.
Now, where were Aaron's sons at? Did they go into the Holy of
I
Holies?
think they were already out
still-
there.
They didn't go in here, I think they were out here,
That's what I-
because people saw what happened, because the fire came out and consumed them, like it did to consume the sacrifice which was on that altar. So the indication is they were outside.
But they were headed for the altar of incense.
I'm thinking they must have been. They were headed somewhere. They shouldn't have been.
Oh, yeah.
Jay, did you have a comment back there?
Just a different version here.
Go ahead.
He is to take a censer full of burning coals from the altar before Adonai, and with his hand full of ground fragrant incense, bring it inside the curtain. He is to put the incense on the fire before Adonai, so that the cloud of the incense will cover the ark of the covenant, which is over the testimony, in order that he not die.
That sounds very similar as far as the,
But the order of it is,
yeah. Because what happens in verse 14, he is to take some of the bull's blood and with his finger sprinkle it on the front of the atonement cover. Then he shall sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before the atonement cover. So it sounds like he's got the censer, the incense, the coals, the blood. Like, he's ready.
I
He's
think
prepared.
I think he's going there now. But
No
then he
indication
says-
of it.
Yeah, he says, then he shall kill the goat and go back in.
Well, that, yeah,
He's going, I mean, this is a process.
right.
It's not like, okay, here's the
Well,
goat
'cause the-
file, here's
The
this blood.
bull's blood is for him.
Right,
And he can't sacrifice for them until he's had the atonement. So, and one thing that this God kind of just made me think about is he's standing here and he puts blood where? On the Ark of the Testimony.
On the east side, on the mercy seat.
On the east?
On the front, which is east, but yeah, on the front. Did he put it anywhere else? Did he put it on horns anywhere else all the way around?
Just sit on the mercy seat on the east side, also in front of the mercy seat.
So he puts it on the cover, on the east side in front, and then in front of, I think that refers to like on the floor, you know,
Yeah.
because
The east
the
side.
tent is sitting on the ground. There's no slab. But nowhere else. He doesn't like, you know, come over here, over here, over here. And just a kind of a little picture that I got was, you know, don't turn to the right or to the left. Go straight. Go straight. Stop. Don't try and go around the side. Don't try and figure something else out. Go straight. Because you're in the presence, as when I was talking to Dana, she says, yeah, duh, God's right there. His cloud's there. You don't want to go anywhere else. Yes, Ty.
Well, and another parallel to that is we know that, especially since this is the high priest doing it, and he's doing it through the ark, it's for atonement, I mean, all those kind of pictures. But if you go to Ezekiel and you actually read through Ezekiel, and when the temple is rebuilt, and what gate does he enter through? It's the east gate.
Yeah.
Which gate is always open, and which, you know, it's always the east aspects of it. So that's really cool because it's that straight line for him.
Yeah. And on that straight line note, I mean, look what's in this straight line as you are going this direction towards him. If you're standing outside and you're looking through the gate, you know, say the curtain's not there, you've got the brazen altar in front of you where you lay down your life as a sacrifice first. And you've got the incense altar where you're offering up your prayers and then his presence. And that gives us that kind of a picture, at least in my mind, of a progression. You know, like you guys talk about when you go into prayer. I mean, you physically or mentally walk through this procedure going into prayer, which is just so huge because what does incense represent? Prayers of the saints. What does this room probably have quite a bit of going on inside of it? Prayer, because there's smoke everywhere, right? This stuff's burning all the time. There's smoke coming off the lamps, but the prayers of the saints are represented by the incense. Well, in that one time a year, it comes in here. Well, when God is here, what's here anyway? The cloud. Yeah. The glory, his presence. So one time a year we bring in and kind of have some prayers in there. But this is all the time. And prayer is something that, as we were talking Thursday night at the leaders meeting, that I'm really, really bad at and weak in and just don't do a good job of. The worst part of my walk is praying. I'll get here and read for hours and hours and maybe offer up a little prayer here and there and, you know, think about it sometimes during the day. Oh, I should pray right now. Well, I got to put this toothpaste on the shelf. I guess I better do that instead. And it's a hard time separating that in my head and doing that at the same time. Getting better at it. But, and that's kind of where God was leading me in this week, starting like Wednesday night, was in prayer. And just to give you, there's going to be one very slight change to what we do a little bit later after we get done with the lesson and we have announcements and prayer requests. We're going to have just kind of a general ending prayer before we start fellowship. Those who are interested, I and whoever else, we're going to take this board, go in this room and lay some prayer on whatever requests are on here. So if anybody wants to join us for that, as opposed to having 30 minutes of taking prayer requests and 45 seconds of praying over it, we're going to take it in and just see where the Spirit takes it with that. So just to give you a heads up. So let's, before we get back, because we're going to come back to prayer, just because that's where, like I said, where God's been kind of leading me on this the last couple of days. But I want to go ahead and walk through kind of the rest of this here, because there are some things that that we do need to talk about and make sure we understand what our kind of role is in this, and how do we apply ourselves to this when there really isn't, you know, a temple structure and the ark and all these different things. What's that look like for us? And because we are to apply our lives to Scripture. So, okay. So as Gabriel mentioned in verse 15, and Jim mentioned as well, slaughters the goat for the sin offering and takes its blood behind the curtain and does with it as he did with the bull's blood. So he atones for himself, sacrificed the goat, come in and atone for the people in the same way. And verse 17, no one is to be in the tent of meeting from the time Aaron goes in to make atonement in the most holy place until he comes out, having made atonement for himself, his household, and the whole community of Israel. Kind of a warning.
Whole thing's empty.
Whole thing's empty. Nobody else is in here. Not that there's a lot of people that can be in there, but the ones that could be, don't be. Stay out. This is one guy taking care of all this stuff, which maybe that's kind of the picture of, you know, remember what just happened to the two yahoos. Don't try and come in and just see what's going on, you know, because he's got to get behind the curtain somehow, so it's got to move just a little bit, so there'd be that temptation to, what's he doing back there, right? Don't do it. Let the high priest take care of it.
Am I mistaken in that it's actually talking about in the entire tabernacle? It's not just in the holy place?
Yeah, it's the whole tabernacle.
Because it says, for me, it says tabernacle of congregation. And there shall be no man in the tabernacle of congregation when he goes in to make an atonement in the holy place. So he's making the distinction there, but he's saying no one in the entire tabernacle can be.
Is the tabernacle the small part, or is it the whole entire
No, that's what I'm
courtyard?
saying.
Because I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Because only Aaron can go into the holy place.
Well, who's going to hold on to all the animals that are out here? Well, he's going back and forth. But if the priest can't be there,
Then they're probably not there right now.
But that's what I'm saying, though. That
that's the
there's-
question.
But it's saying that there should be no man in the tabernacle of the congregation when he goes in to make an atonement in the holy place, until he comes out and has made an atonement for himself and for his household and for all the congregation of
So
Israel.
nobody can go in there until he's made atonement for himself and his family.
But I'm just,
And the whole community.
and right now, we're talking about a tent-like structure.
Right.
But I'm moving forward when we're talking about the actual temple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is a big temple area. There was a big court.
Well, And the question I would have, and this is just my thoughts, because I don't know, to be honest, I don't really know. As we talked about, when we talked about the sacrifices, it's probably not a one-man job.
Right.
I mean, he's not going to sacrifice a bull by himself. Not likely. So it's going to have to be somebody here when that bull is sacrificed. But this is inside the courtyard, if I'm correct. The big courtyard. So I don't know if this is referring to nobody comes in this structure or nobody in the whole entire area.
At least for that
So
period.
Ty's homework for the week.
Well, I mean, going back to when I was teaching last time, and we were looking at that aspect of it, of being where the placement was, and how you had the children of Israel all around the tabernacle, and how the tabernacle was a holy place.
Right.
The camp was to remain holy, but it wasn't a designation of a holy place. And
Right.
so I'm going back to that and going, okay, in the wording, I'm seeing that there's no one in here. Now, I get your point. It's not gonna be easy, especially since Aaron's probably what at this point? 80s, 90s, somewhere in that range. And it's not gonna be easy for him to kill a bull.
You think they probably don't raise up tornado though to be a sacrifice?
Raise up what? I'm sorry.
Tornado, the big
No idea what you're talking about.
Bronco riding bull, you know, they breed
Well,
them to like,
At the same time, though, these are premium specimens.
yeah.
That's
You know,
true.
These are premium.
Yeah,
There's
no blemishes.
no blemishes. They're kind of
They're not
best
the
of
runts,
herd.
yeah.
Right.
He's not going after the
And
the
there again,
stragglers.
I don't know how many calves you've ever picked up in your life, but a small calf is 500 pounds. So I'm just saying that's, you know, it's not, you're right, it doesn't seem like a one-man job, but in the wording, it makes it seem like
Yeah.
there's that distinction where there's no one in.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 17,
So I think what
there
we-
shall be no man in the tabernacle of the congregation, which is also read as in the tent of meet, and says also the tent of meeting in a different version.
So what we probably need to figure out is when it refers to tent of meeting or tabernacle of congregation, whichever, what's that referring to? What is the tabernacle of the congregation? Is it the whole footprint, or is it the smaller piece inside? Like a vocabulary thing, we got to figure out what it says.
Well, and there's also a reason because once again, some of this is just semantics if you really want to look
Yeah,
at it
it's
that
true.
way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a reason that no one else was in there.
Mhm.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's the important thing. But if we don't understand where they are,
Yeah.
then
Because
we
if
get
they're
that wrong.
if it's no one's in here, but there are some people out here, or no one's in here, there is a difference.
Right.
And we're talking, it's like form versus function.
Right.
You know, we talk about a lot in here. So the form is a little bit ambiguous, maybe, not ambiguous, but unclear for us in our understanding. But the function is nobody else. The high priest is the only one that can do that. So there was a comment over here, I believe.
Yeah, Jim,
What you got, Gabriel?
would you go cross-reference that with, since you've got a computer there,
Mm-hmm.
Leviticus 1:3, or the tabernacle of meeting, with that same phrase, is that the same phrase?
It's, just- I mean, they're the same phrase, between 1:3 and
Yeah,
18.
and again, you wouldn't refer to the holy place as the tabernacle of the congregation. because
Right.
The congregation didn't spend any time in there.
Right, and that's where everybody meets.
At the
whenever
door
it's
where
set.
the
What about 1:1?
Same phrase.
The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting.
Ohel Moed. It's one of the things that I really kind of like, that it's the tabernacle, at least they call it tabernacle of the congregation. It's tabernacle of appointed times. Yeah.
The meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's when they came there,
Tent of meeting.
certain times. So Leviticus 1:1 and 1:3 are kind of leaning towards
The whole thing. But,
the Lord spoke to him from the whole thing.
and the Lord called Moses and spake unto him out of the tabernacle. I see what you're saying.
Because if you go back to Exodus, we just get done with in the end of Exodus. Everything's put together, everything's there.
Hmm.
The presence.
The presence came down here, and then he spoke in Leviticus 1.
Well, they're
So,
again using that same reference though, 1:5. And he shall kill the bullock before the Lord, and the priests, Aaron's sons, shall bring the blood and sprinkle the blood around upon the altar that is by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation.
so they're going to sprinkle it on the door, because the sacrifice takes place in...
Okay, here I've got it, okay.
All right, Gabriel's got it all solved.
In Exodus 40, verse 7, you shall set the laver between the tabernacle of meeting and the altar and the water. Check that one, that we would know.
Exodus 40, verse 6.
40, verse 7.
Okay, and 6.
So you shall set the laver between the tabernacle of meeting and the altar.
Ah, yeah.
Tabernacle, whatever that phrase is. Now, is that the same phrase as what's talked about in Leviticus 16?
Yep.